I'm Fatima Bey the MindShifter. I'm an international MindShift coach, um, amongst many other things. So, I'm also a media personality. So, I am here to shift your thinking for future success. I do that many different ways. So, I'm here every Monday at 7 o'clock. And I usually do things a series at a time. So right now, the series that I'm working through is called You Already Know This. And I'm actually excited about the series that's coming next. But right now, I'm kind of in the middle of the series. You already know this. So in this series, I talk about overused cliches like follow your heart. Um, work smarter, not harder. Just there's so many that people use, and they're overused, and they've become completely meaningless to most of us when we hear them because of their overuse and misuse. So I talk about these cliches in this series, and I talk about the truth and the lie of them. So I take a deeper dive into uh, why some of them are true and why some of them are lies. Tonight's one is a lie. So that people intend with truth. Well, we're going to break that down. So tonight I'm talking about follow your heart. And yes, every time I say one of these cliches, I get a bimbo airheaded look on my face because that's what it feels like every time we hear them. Yes, follow your heart. And I'm going to talk about why this one is bad, intended for good, but leads to a lot of bad things. So we've all heard the phrase follow your heart. So it sounds good. Follow your heart sounds good. It feels good. However, it can lead to destruction and often does. It can destroy you. So here's the thing about follow your heart that I want to explain right off the bat. Follow your heart is what it's a cultural lie. So what most people really mean when they say follow your heart is follow your emotions. But the truth is, following your emotions is going to lead you in a ditch. It's going to lead your life destroyed into really bad choices. We're taught to we're taught to follow our emotions, really, but we don't use that word. We say heart. Let's break down that word for a second. When people use the word heart, unfortunately, it is so overused and misused and generalized in English and Spanish. Because when you say amor y corazón in Spanish, it's misused there too. In the same way I think it is in English. I don't know about other languages, I just know about those two. So we say heart very often, and what we actually mean is emotions, especially in America because our culture teaches us that we must worship them. You heard me right. Our culture teaches us to worship our emotions. And this is what gets us in a lot of trouble, and it is at root of at least 50% of societal issues. If you really want to, yeah, at least 50% of societal issues. So, follow your heart. What people really mean is follow your emotions. And this is why this is a trap. Because your emotions are volatile, they're fragile. They run around like the wind, right? Your emotions can get you following your emotions can get you into debt, heartbreak, poor choices, and all of that can lead to broken lives. And every single one of you are thinking right now about a poor choice you made following an emotion, right? Or someone that you watched. Maybe you have better emotional control and you haven't done that, but you'd be a rare human being if you haven't. Um, or maybe you have and you just won't admit that that's what it was. A lot of us do, and to a certain degree, it's natural, but it's worse if you're American and other certain cultures around the world where we are taught to follow our emotions instead of feeling them. This is the way I always like to say it. It's okay to have emotions, but it's not okay for emotions to have you. There is a large difference. So, America's worship of emotions is what it really is. When you worship something, you sacrifice for it. You give you give to it, you give into it, you bow down to it. That's what we do in America, in the US rather. But the truth is, when we do this and we follow our emotions, what it does is it enslaves us because you've now bowed down to it. I am now your servant, emotions. What shall I do for thee? This is what we do. And we don't realize that that's what we're doing. And it's important that we don't do that. This is again what leads to, you know how many, you know where a lot of people who follow their emotions end up? In jail and in cemetery, or in a life that feels like both. I'm gonna let that marinate for a minute. All right. So when people are saying follow your heart and they're well intended with it, what they really mean is follow your intuition, your spirit man, your inner self. Give it whatever phrase you're comfortable with, because it all in this context boils down to the same thing. Outside of this context, they don't. But within this context, those all boil down to the same thing. So, what you should listen to your inner self. The problem is, we're taught out of that culturally in America, but not just the US. A lot of cultures teach people out of their true selves. And your true self knows a lot more than your logic does. I like to put it like this: logic is like uh, someone who's slow and doesn't understand too fast. Intuition is, I just realized I forgot to turn the light on. Hold on. Okay, that's better. Now, sorry about that, y'all. But I'd rather not keep going on in the dark if I don't have to. So your intuition is like that. Uh, your intuition is super fast, like a fast car, like zoom, gets there faster because your intuition sees more than your logic. And this is a concept that some people might find controversial, but you know me, I don't care. I must say it anyway. I think most people don't, though. Your logic is slow. Your logic only understands this much, whereas your intuition sees the whole room. You see a potato chip in the room if you're only using logic. But the thing is, our culture teaches us, oh, you can only use logic. You can only use logic. But the truth is, logic is normal. You should use logic. And I'm not saying that we need to be to the other end of the extreme and dismiss logic and only follow our spirits and be airheads. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there has to be a balance. But since I'm American and I understand this culture and many other cultures that are like it, because it's not just us, we're taught to only think with logic and to dismiss any intuition. And that is what keeps us trapped, absolutely trapped. We get into relationships we shouldn't get into because you knew there was something wrong with that woman. Something told you, something ain't right here, but you didn't listen because logic said, don't be judgmental. Maybe, maybe she just needs love and she'll be okay. You didn't listen. And now a divorce, 3 kids, and a whole debt later. You know what I'm saying? That's just one example. There's a lot of other choices we make. That's just an easy one that a lot of people can relate to. So I'm going to give you this analogy. GPS, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Intuition is like a GPS. This is why I don't like reading from notes, but I have to because I'll forget stuff if I don't. Intuition is like a GPS. It's steady direction. But you have to turn it on first. See, the problem is most of us, when they say follow your heart, don't know how to follow your intuition because you've never been in touch with it. So your GPS will get you to where you need to go. All you got to do is type in the address. Okay, take a left here, take a right there, blah, blah, blah. But your GPS can't help you if you don't turn it on. Your inner self, your intuition, your spirit man, whatever word you want to call it, cannot help you if you don't know how to listen. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about how you can change that, because I think a lot of you are there and you don't know how to get out of there. So I'm going to help you with that. I'm not just going to tell you what's wrong, but how to get right. So your emotions are like the weather. They're constantly changing. They're like the wind. Woo, woo, here we go, everywhere. Yay, blah, blah, blah. That's your emotions. Your emotions are like, oh, here, oh, yeah. Blah, blah, blah. That's your emotions. You follow that, you're going to be running around and ain't going nowhere. And some of you can look back at your life and say, yeah, that's what I did. I followed my emotions. And we especially do this. Let me take a break here and talk about dating, because we especially do this in dating, especially in the US, where dating is a different culture than in other places. We are like, oh my God, we have so much in common. We just clicked. And now we're in love. I'm sorry. I can't say that without laughing because it sounds so silly. But we do that. But we often do that. And the truth is, you weren't following your intuition. You were following your emotions, because your intuition told you something's off. Your emotions told you this feels good. So therefore, it must be right. Bullshit. And you need to start learning the difference. So it's also like a sugar rush versus nutrition. Your emotions give you a quick sugar rush. You're follow your heart and you follow your emotions. It gives you a quick sugar rush. It gives you a really good quick feeling. Maybe you get a couple months relationship out of it. Maybe you get some good sex out of it. Maybe you get some good companionship when you go to movies. Whatever you get out of it. That's not the same thing as nutrition. Intuition is like nutrition. It knows the difference between food and fluff. Your emotions are the fluff. And again, it's not that you should ignore your emotions, and it's not that you shouldn't deal with your emotions. You should absolutely face them and deal with them and feel them. But they are not to be your guide in life, because when they are, you are in trouble. You will sabotage yourself in some kind of way or another. So let's talk about the difference. I'm going to break down the difference between emotions and intuition or inner self. So your emotions a lot of them come from cultural programming. And I haven't used that word until now, but cultural programming is why we think the way we do when it comes to following our emotions. I talk about being America. Let's talk about the opposite end. Eastern Europe and much of Asia has this opposite mentality of America, where you're completely supposed to pretend you don't have emotions and you're out of touch with it. That's also bad. That's also to the other extreme. That's also damaging. And and again, that's not good. That's their cultural programming. Our cultural programming is to worship our emotions. Their cultural programming is to pretend it doesn't exist. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap. Be strong. Don't feel your feelings. And that's damaging as well. And I'm using those cultures generally speaking, but there's a lot of other places I can name. Those are just the first ones that come to mind. Emotions are also fleeting. That means they can run away like the wind. Emotions are also reactionary. There's no wisdom in emotions. There's wisdom in intuition, because intuition knows something you don't. Well, let me rephrase that. Intuition knows something your logical mind has not yet figured out. It's just like you said, when you know at work something's off about that woman. And I've made this mistake myself. I have had to learn the difference. So I'm not telling you anything that um that I just read from a book. This is stuff I know because I've also experienced. I watched it, I've experienced it. I have at times said something's off there. Months later, sometimes a year, sometimes years later, but sometime later, I find out that what I brushed off because my logic said, no, you might be being too judgmental, give the person a chance. My intuition was right. that person was shady as hell and had this and that and XYZ going on, and I didn't listen. And one thing I've learned is my spirit man is always right. I have learned to listen. So whether it makes logical sense to me or not, if I feel like something's off, it's off. Bye. I'm done. If you don't like it, that's your problem. But I'll very politely decline, but I'm staying away. And the truth always comes out. You might find out later, but I want all of you to really hear me, and how important this is. So those are some traits of emotion. So now I'm going to talk about the traits of your inner self or your intuition. Your intuition, your inner self is steady. It is aligned with truth. So what I mean by that is your intuition will know something's telling me to not go out in the street right now. Your logic says there's no cars coming. Intuition says don't go on the street right now. A few minutes later, there's a car crash right where you would have been standing, or a Big Mac truck was coming out of control and would have killed you if you had stood where you were going to stand. That's what I mean by intuition is aligned with truth, and it's smarter than your brain. It's smarter than logic. Intuition can see what your logical brain cannot. It knows something's about to happen. How that happens, that's a whole nother conversation that I'm not even gonna have on here because everybody's got their beliefs of how that happens. I don't care about that. My point is that it's there and all of us have it. And you need to learn how to tune into it. Your intuition already knows what's right and wrong. And here's the key thing. Sometimes you're like, well, I don't know if I should do this, if I should not do this, because would it be wrong if I did this? Your intuition always is already like, that ain't right, or that that's the right thing to do, whatever the case may be. Your logic will try to come up with excuses to do it or not do it, but your intuition already knows. Listen. But the problem is, if you're not used to listening, how do you know? It's kind of like if I call you on the phone and you've never heard my voice before, how would you recognize me? So, what we should not do is disconnect from self and drown ourselves in cultural logic. Cultural logic is one of the number one things that most people on earth need to unlearn. I don't care what culture you're from, I don't care what country you're from. Every single culture on earth has good and bad things about it. And many of you are held back in life because you have not learned how to unlearn what the garbage you've been taught, the wrong parts that you've been taught. You've been taught to love your family. That's good. You should love your family. But you've been taught to love your family and worship that love of family over any logic or right or wrong. That is wrong. But your culture has taught you that. And there are a lot of places in the world that teach that sort of thing. So I'm not even talking about the US, I'm just mean in general. So you don't want to drown yourself in cultural logic. You need to unlearn. And that takes effort. It's not going to fall in your lap and float from the sky. If you want to grow and you want to do better, you got to make the effort. And there's no amount of teaching and coaching and preaching and therapy that's going to change unless you want to. So, I want you to phrase check. Follow your heart because it sounds so freaking airheaded. The second I hear someone say follow your heart, a light bulb goes off in my head and it's like, "Oh, there's air in there." That's what it sounds like. Now, some of you have been using it because you don't know what better words to use. Maybe you should start saying, listen to your intuition, listen to your inner self. Both of those work. I tend to say intuition because it's something that most people understand. Inner self sounds a little too spaceshipy for some people, but I know people who use it that aren't spaceshipy, but it can kind of sound like that sometimes. But when you say follow your heart, I would suggest that you find another phrase. Because the second you say that, you could have 12 people in the room and like a third of them are thinking one thing, a third are thinking another. You just said one thing that got different interpretations that often will lead to the wrong thing. If you say inner self or intuition, or you could say spirit man, depending on what your religious beliefs are, people understand that much more specifically than follow your heart. It's way too bland, it's way too generalized, And it's just become way too fake. It's just airheaded. It's just become an airheaded phrase. And again, everybody who uses it is not an airhead. So that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that that's what comes across. And that's the way that's what it's become because of how people use it. So here's how you can tell the difference of whether you're following an emotion, because sometimes you are hearing this for the first time. It's a new concept for you, and you don't really understand how to tell the difference between emotion and intuition. So when something is an emotion, it can feel overly urgent. But I do want to give you a little balance with that. Your intuition might feel urgent too, if something is actually urgent, but it's a different kind of urgency, and it's actually hard to explain. When your spirit is feeling, your inner man is feeling an urgent feeling, because again, I'll use the example of the car coming around the road. It can be like, don't go there, don't go there. That's a different urgency than a desperate. Maybe that's the way I'll phrase it. Desperate. When you're following your emotions, the urgency feels desperate. When you're following your intuition, the urgency feels important. Those are two completely different feelings. And they're inward feelings. They're not something I can just write on a piece of paper. They're words on a paper, but you have to kind of feel them. And I hope that helps some of you to know what I mean. Your emotions are loud. Intuition is very quiet. Intuition is that wise person sitting on the couch going, that's not a good idea. Emotions are like, hey, 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 hey. We all know that feeling, right? Because we've all gotten it, right? Um, Emotions are often tied to fear. See, when you are following your heart and you start doing something based out of fear, that's following an emotion. It's not following your intuition. Your intuition might say, hey, something's wrong, but that's not the same feeling as fear. That's different. They actually feel different. And I'm saying this to you because I want you to write this down, and I want you to begin to notice these things and begin to weigh them in your mind and on a piece of paper. I'll talk about that in a minute. Because this can really help you to know the difference and stop making colossal mistakes. Most people, when they do it, it's not just that they're stupid. Often people make these mistakes because they're well intended, because our culture has taught us a lot of bad garbage. And one of them is to worship our emotions and that we must follow them instead of have them. There's a difference. And emotions run on impulse. Intuition never runs on impulse. Intuition might quicken you because something is important in the moment, but it's not impulsive. And we all know what impulse feels like, at least most of us. Your emotions run on impulse. Your emotions also run on validation. I need to be validated, so therefore I'm going to date this man or this woman that my spirit already told me is not a match, or something wrong, or I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's something wrong with them or something wrong with me, or we just don't match, or we're out of season, whatever, just something ain't right there. Sometimes it's not because the person's wrong. Sometimes it is. Sometimes just they're not a match for you. But when you need validation, again, following your emotions, I'm following my heart. You're following your emotions. You need validation. So you're dating the wrong person instead of listening to your inner man who told you not to. And then many bills later, many heartaches later, a whole self esteem drop later, I should have listened. How many of you have said that? Not just about dating, but other things too. We've all done it. I think most people have done it. So, intuition. What does intuition look like? Intuition, let me explain it this way. Intuition is like tuning in to a radio, tuning into a radio station. So, the FM, AM radios are always on 24/7. There's always a station on. There's still radios all around the world. But you can't hear the music unless you turn it on and tune in. Intuition is always there. She's quiet and she's trying to give you some wisdom, but you can't hear her unless you turn the radio on. And if you've never turned the radio on before, it's time to start trying, because it'll save you a lot of heartache and a lot of problems, even if it doesn't make logical sense to you in the moment. If it's telling you don't do something, don't. Don't go somewhere, don't. Intuition is quiet, like I said. Intuition is also steady. Intuition is not like frantic, ooh, 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 like your emotions are. Intuition is steady, calm, and wise. When you learn how to listen and hear the difference, you'll see exactly what I mean, because they are drastic. Intuition persists even when it's inconvenient and unpopular. Even when everybody else in the room is like, why don't you like her? I don't see, she ain't done nothing with nobody. There ain't nothing wrong with her. But your intuition is saying, is something wrong with that, something off about that girl, something wrong. Then you find out later that she's been stealing from everybody. You find out later she was sleeping with everybody's husband. Whatever the bad thing is, she's been, whatever the bad thing is. Listen, even if everybody else around there doesn't make sense, sometimes you don't need to share it with people who, if they're not on your level, meaning they don't understand intuition, they're not picking up what you are. Why are you discussing it with them? They don't get it. It's the same reason you don't discuss chemistry with a kindergartner. They're not at a level to understand. It's that simple. Sometimes you can save yourself heartache by not, and I've done this so much in my life, and I've learned to be wiser with who I share stuff with. Now it's hard to get me to share anything. Um, I'll share certain things with certain people, but I don't share much, because I have learned to be wiser with what I share, because sometimes I'm casting pearls to swine and not understanding why they're not valuing the pearls. And most of you, I think a lot of you understand that analogy. So, um, here's how you can practice listening. I told you I'd give you some tips. Sit in silence and stillness. You would be surprised what you will pick up on and hear if you just sit and listen. Especially if you're trying to make a decision. It's like, what is my inner self saying? You might get it wrong the first couple of times, but that's okay. Sometimes you need to do that before you get it right. Often, you need to do it before you get it right. I know how to do that now, but I had to go through wrong choices and misunderstandings before I arrived at, aha. How you learn, honestly, the best way to learn, patterns. When you keep doing the same thing, making the same mistake, now you see the pattern. You keep doing the right thing, you keep seeing the right results, now you see the pattern. So you're not going to learn the pattern by watching TV. You're going to learn the pattern by experiencing it. Plain and simple. But you can speed up that process by sitting down and listening. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to write down what you sense, what your inner man feels, and compare the patterns. So I just said that there's patterns. What happens is if you sit in those quiet moments and you start actually paying attention, and I just want you to keep a log. You can keep it in your phone, you keep it on a piece of paper, you can keep it on a voice note, whatever works for you. Keep it on a spreadsheet if you want. But start writing this stuff down, and that's the best way for you to see those patterns. You really start to see those patterns, and if all of us do this, the entire planet will be better, because we'll stop making these colossal mistakes that have ripple effects on everybody around us and cause wars in your home and wars with nuclear bombs. Same thing, same mindset, same principle. So I want you to remember to stop chasing cultural cliches and start practicing recognition. I just give you a couple of tips on how. Go back and listen, if you want to get it again. And I want to leave you with this. Tune in to the radio station so you can learn how to recognize the music and not follow the wind. So, thank you all for coming. And I'm glad that I hope that you got something out of this that you can apply to your life, because this applies to every single human being watching, literally every single human being watching. So I hope that you get something out of it. If you want to know more about my coaching and my podcast, my audio blog, and all the other stuff that I do, go to fatimabey.com, FATIMABEY.com, to learn more. There's a whole lot there, and it's growing. So I hope to see you guys next week.